Signs of the Southland, Monday, September 12th, 2022. Gentlemen, we enter an era of no more Scott Frost days. How does that make you feel, Mr. Grant?
Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened.
Or smile over, what was it, $15 million in buyout money that's been paid out? What would you do with 15 million extra dollars, Mr. Purdy?
Right now, I pay off my car and whatever Joe Biden doesn't cover with the new student loan forgiveness. Those are my top priorities right now.
Dude,
Yeah.
come on, bet bigger here. Come on.
Hey,
I want to hear
there,
some ridiculous like crypto scheme.
no, the only scheme you
No.
need is real estate, and you got to buy a nice house in Virginia
Actually,
Highland and
no,
retire, and then just let the stock market cook, baby. I'm boring.
yeah,
I'm boring.
that's also a house purchase. That is I buy out my current lease, let everyone live at my place for free, and then go buy a house somewhere else. That gets me set.
Scott
Yeah,
Frost got
the
awarded generational wealth for being bad at coaching football, and I think that's wonderful. It's terrible if you look at the current state of the U.S. economy, but it's wonderful.
do
With
you
15
think?
million, with 15 million, I can become the first Gen Zer to own a house.
Woof. Oh my God.
Hey, property is hard to come by, especially in places that we want to live because we're all in town types. So that's delightful for us as, young Atlantans. But in terms of other fun things you can do with $15 million, I'm sure if you called either Angel Cabrera or Todd Stansbury, they would be able to, help you out of that hole real quick.
They're trying
Speaking of
to
what you
rank.
could do with that, you could Angel Cabrera and Todd Stansbury might ask you to divert some of those funds to the Ken Byers Tennis Complex to talk about some ITA ranked men's tennis teams, wouldn't they?
And fans of volleyball. There you go.
Dude, you ruined the segue into the first news segment. I can't take you anywhere. Please read the rankings. We'll have to fix it in post.
Andres Martin, number 20, singles, shockingly low. In my humble opinion, he's been, the star, the stud, court number one of the team for a while. So number 20 does seem a little bit low, especially for somebody who's been a regular ITA and NCAA tournament appearer. Marcus McDaniel's at number 97. Again, that feels a little bit low as well. But Martin and McDaniel are sitting right at number 17 in doubles. And with, plenty of ITA competitions that are national, they'll have some opportunity to prove that, up against some of the best in the fall and in the spring as well. So pretty good showing overall, but also kind of, dare I say, what we would expect to see, at least in terms of who shows up in the rankings. Yes? No?
Maybe. I will note Andres Martin, without playing a college match, did climb 17 spots in the college rankings because he finished 37 last year.
Really?
Yes. So according to the Ramblin' Wreck, Martin was ranked at number 37 at the end of the 2021-20 season. So yeah, he said he, without playing a college match, but playing some very good pro matches, including defeating in Atlanta, found his way up some more. So
Maybe he peaked a little bit higher, like,
he may have
teens
been
or
higher at
tens,
some point.
because
Yeah,
I
I
feel
don't
like
know.
that fact didn't just like float out of nowhere from my brain, but go figure. He's up.
Very
That's good. Yeah. Cool.
I mean, sticking two guys in the top 100 and then a top 20s doubles team is pretty good business any day of the week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That'll
What
that'll set him up well, I think, for the spring in particular.
what does their fall slate look like? Because I know they announced a preliminary schedule at some point.
Yeah, so that's actually a great question because it starts very soon. They are going to be at UTR Columbus, which I take it to be at Columbus State University based on the graphics included. That'll be this coming weekend. The weekend after that, they'll be in Nashville for the Commodore Invitational. That's a Friday through Sunday event as well. They'll be at UTR Georgia Gwinnett in Lawrenceville. A lot of UTR tournaments this year. That's different. And then they will be at ITA All American Championships, as we've noted in the past. There, that is a pretty comprehensive national type event. And then, oh man, that's long. Oh, Southeast Regionals too. Forgot about that. And if they win through, they will play at the ITA Nationals in the fall. And then they do have a Florida State event in there as well. So they're going to be kind of all over the map.
Competitive.
Shame on me. I also forgot the GT fall invite. So yeah, a lot of overlapping tournaments, different places that they'll be. Not sure exactly. It's not team competition, so sometimes you see some odd doubles lineups or odd singles lineups. It's mostly draw play in the fall.
I think whenever we talk about the tennis fall slates, we're like, okay, well, this is sort of like these games matter, right? They're individual play, like you said, draw play. These games matter, but when we talk about evaluating the team and its performance as a whole, the spring is really what draws our attention, right?
I would say so. Not many fall tournaments are team scored, right? So you can't think about it in the traditional, 6 singles courts, 3 doubles courts. You might have 7 singles players. You might have 5. You might be splitting your squad and sending, half to ITA Southeast Regionals and half to the Florida State Futures, like they'll be doing because they're both on the schedule this year. I've said like 8 times here, but excuse that. And the real takeaways you're going to get are, how is Andres Martin looking? Our court 1 option. How's Marcus looking? etc. down the roster. So a little bit more of that individual or playing around with the doubles too. So
moving right along on slate, golf was at the Maui Gym Intercollegiate in Scottsdale, Arizona this past week. They started off a little rough. They were 11th place after the first round, posting at 5 under par, and then they picked it up in the next couple of rounds. 18 under after round 2 to be 9th, and 34 under after the final round. Mr. Purdy, you got one look at the box score here. What did you think of the performance, especially that final day?
Final day was great. Our top 2 guys, Howe and I forgot who, and Steelman, both shot under 70 every day, which put them under par for every day. It was a par 70 course. And Howe finished tied for 3rd individually. We climbed 5 spots on Sunday or whatever, if the final day was Sunday or Saturday, I forgot. But no one climbed more spots in that given day. So we were clicking on all cylinders that day, which, again, as we said, in the spring, for those listening, like, we knew this team was able to beat just about anybody any given day, but it's also golf and college golf. So you can just be really bad sometimes. The variance there is a lot more. But no, overall, I think it's definitely a great start. We were only 1 shot out of 3rd as well. That's where FSU was, and then Auburn finished a good. They're 11 shots ahead of us. So it was Auburn far and out won. But no, Howe was great. Steelman was great. Tran and Forrester finished tied for 24th, and Lamprecht was tied for 44th. So overall, pretty good showing. When I was looking at the leaderboard, I accidentally thought we had some Georgia State guys because they were also at this tournament, but I was just, eye blind.
Yeah. The thing I want to say there is Lamprecht is usually at the top of our lineup. So very interesting to see how well Tech finished overall with him having a bit of a slower week. Tied for 44 isn't bad, especially with how large of a tournament it is. But when he's your go-to guy in a lot of senses, that's, also interesting to see just in terms of color for, overall clarity. If you don't follow golf that much, again, Howe, Forrester, and Steelman are all seniors. Steelman did transfer in from Mizzou. Lamprecht is a junior, and Tran is a freshman. So interesting to see the freshman crack that 5-man lineup overall.
Speaking of new lineups, Club Hockey's lineup is a little bit retooled after losing a couple of seniors. They started hot the last couple of weekends in their new season. They are now 4-0. They went 2-0 versus Alabama Huntsville, and then 2-0-1 Versus Middle Tennessee State. Jake, explain to me 2-0-1, but 4-0 on the year.
Yeah, so the CHF, that's the league they played in the last 2 years, College Hockey Federation, doesn't technically count shootouts. So if the game ends in a tie, it's just a tie. On their website, they present it as 3-0-0-1, which is a lot of digits for your scorekeeping at home. So that's super fun. I think I may have mistyped in the Yellow Jacket roundup, so forgive me there. But basically, Middle Tennessee State and Georgia Tech elected to play a shoot off because they wanted to have a winner, in which Tech won. That's a lot of fun. But yeah, they went up to Nashville. I think they said that Connolly, I think, was one of their captains last year too. But Connolly and Rule got goals in the shootout to break the tie. But I guess that doesn't count for the standings. But they have, as we said, showed out well against Alabama, Huntsville, and Middle Tennessee State.
Good stuff on the club hockey front. Let's move over to O'Keefe Gym for the Georgia Tech Classic. 2 results on deck for you. I guess a third game was played, but we don't really need to talk about that one between BYU and Ohio State. But Tech did play number 10 BYU on Thursday night. That was a 3-0 dispatching of, again, a top 10 team, and then fell 3-1 to number 8 Ohio State on Sunday afternoon. Jake, you were at the BYU game. Give me a high-level overview of what you saw.
I think ultimately the final score was a bit deceiving. It was a 3-0 sweep, and they did really knock their socks off in the third set. But I wouldn't say that Tech really, sometimes sweeps just happen, right? Georgia Tech swept a very, very, very good Ohio State team in the Sweet 16 last year. We'll get to them in just a second. But, sometimes a point or two just bounce a certain way, an error happens at a certain time, and it turns into that 3-0 look. So not to, dampen Tech, sweeping a very good top 10 team, but definitely wouldn't say that it was a, top to bottom, all cylinders, everything all at once. I think overall Tech did play well. There's a reason they won the game, but definitely some takeaways there. And I think that's kind of a general theme of the weekend as well.
Right. I think you meant the way you phrased that was really interesting, because I think what is implied there is there were some cracks that showed up in that performance that then bore out into full-blown issues versus Ohio State. Jack, let's go to you first. You were sitting on the media row for this one versus Ohio State. What did you see from this performance from Tech?
I saw, well, I mean, it was a tough matchup from the get-go. Ohio State is probably just as good as they were last year. I know I had said some things about this when we did the schedule preview about the amount of really good players they have on the All-American front. They are also just on average larger than us. They kept their rotation really, really tight like we usually do, but our usual rotation was not a good size matchup. At times we had to take Pimentel out just because she just literally couldn't cover enough ground because she's our smallest starter. And so we were taking her out at times, letting Elizabeth Patterson in, and then we'd take out Otene and D'Amico for Leah Harper and forgetting her, Leah Harper and who am I forgetting?
Nicole Drunick or
Yeah,
Laura
yeah,
Fisher.
Yeah. Laura Fisher played some time as well. Why I think is they were able to just find alleys and find holes more than most teams ever will against us. They also have the ability to just do that well. Gonzalez, their main hitter, hits about as hard as Bergman does. So we were facing effectively a very close mirror image of us with a few stronger points and a few weaker points. So that was the initial stuff I saw. Also, we Collier very intentionally stacked the schedule. Because we were going to make it through. Like even Pitt, they killed everything last year, but they still weren't undefeated. Like going undefeated on a good volleyball schedule is goddamn near impossible. especially as the talent pool has only gotten bigger in the last few years to where it's not the old 2000s Penn State where you just know they're winning everything like they're women, like the UConn women's basketball team.
Yeah.
So a loss like this, it's not worrying to me at all because we still won a set. We won it very overwhelmingly at the time. And we were really close to forcing a fifth set, which I think this match deserved, honestly.
Yeah.
One service error, and that pretty much did us in. So, yeah, no, I was, and I know y'all might have some comments about the refereeing on this game, but I mean, it's NCAA volleyball. I don't see how you escape that either. So,
well, it was interesting in that what's the point of VAR if the call, at least to me, seemed pretty clear from my angle, and then they went and reversed it. But, I'm going to let Akshay maybe tee that one up. I do want to say one thing tied to they're not going to a fifth set, and that's Tech's general inability to just put the game away or sometimes even put a point away. There was a number of times when, whether it's Tech getting a free ball, kind of a misplay, something like that, and just not converting in a way that I think we were pretty used to seeing them do last year. That was definitely, part of the difference there. And I think tying it back to that BYU game, again, it's a sweep. It was a great win, great resume win, but Tech was up like 19-6, I want to say, in the end of the third, and the score wound up being a lot closer than that, right? It got
a little bit more relaxed at the end there. I mean, also we had just went on a massive streak, so I mean, like regression to the mean is actually like to say like it was also kind of gonna happen. I like your point about putting points away though, because we did that against BYU. We knocked away their errors very easily. Ohio State was able to do that to us.
Yes, Ohio State was able to capitalize in a way that I think last year's Tech team was very good at, but it was also, you're looking at a really experienced Mariana Brambilla or whoever you want to have out there, whether that's Tippett or McKissick as well, that were, very, very reliable and experienced options. And that's kind of something that a team's going to have to learn because, and we said this in the schedule preview, I'm certain this schedule empirically is harder than last year's, and the ACC is only getting better too. So at the end of the day, 6-1 is 6-1. We got 2 more non-con games left, and you got to learn at some point, right? This isn't a team that can just be Texas and roll through a whole season yet.
Yeah.
Here's what I think you guys talked about the game and laid that out very nicely. Here's the one thing that I will say on refereeing. I don't like to complain about refereeing. I think it's incredibly pointless when one
it's bad analysis.
It's very simplistic analysis. It's very reductive, and also usually refereeing is not what decides a game. I think in your usual football cases or your usual basketball cases, it's like, well, you played like crap for most of the day, and you were only tied because you played like crap, not because the refs jobbed you on a bunch of pass interference calls or something like that. That being said, there were some truly atrocious calls that went against Tech in this game. And I'm going to leave it at that because I think if I say anything more, I will get a letter from the Ohio State Athletic Department about slander. So I'm going to leave it at that.
I will say one more thing on that. I just don't understand the point of VAR when you're going to overturn certain. It seemed like a lot of ticky-tack type stuff going on. So I'll let you have it. I want you to feel heard. I want you to feel a little bit echoed. But that's the difference Akshay and I can take when we sit in the fan section versus Jack, who's Mr. Professional over on Media Row. So
I mean, well, you don't see the replay in the media area from where I was sitting. Like they only got one monitor. I didn't have to. I should have had this. Instead of having this stream up, I had the Falcons game on as my second thing on my computer. So that was a mistake on my part.
Mistake in multiple ways on your part for that one.
At least you're honest. Points for that.
Winning. But anyways, well, I mean, also like this might be. I might be wrong on this, but every time I've watched the volleyball replay, I can never tell what it's like. The cameras just aren't good enough. They need phantom cameras to solve these kind of things because the amount of if they had that. I think a lot of our complaints would go away because it's really hard to decipher some of these calls.
So
In
I
my thought was that Hawkeye would really not be that expensive to install at O'Keefe, and I am very curious as to why installations like that for replay haven't been adopted. I assume like okay, you need like 30 some odd cameras or whatever, right,
yeah,
to really get it right, but everyone that like most people that play volleyball or P5 programs like figure it out. This is a worthwhile expense here.
I got two pieces of advice for y'all. These are some cues I take. One, look at the coaching staff. They don't get animated for no reason. They will give you a hint when they think something is one way or the other. They're not always right, but that's one way to look. And two, look at the broadcast staff, because if anyone has a good angle and multiple angles of the situation that's going on, if they're out of their chairs or animated in some way, that's usually an indication that something is not going as expected, or
yeah.
some sort
Well,
of
even there was
afoot.
one call. There was one call. I forgot which one it was. It was something that Ohio State had challenged. I don't know if you remember if it was a tip or if an out ball. But like
Mhm.
I couldn't hear the ref's explanation for any of this. I was only like 6 feet away, if that, but it was so loud that I just couldn't hear anything unless you were right next to the ref. And the PA announcer was like trying to understand the explanation to one of the calls, and he was befuddled. Like he didn't announce anything because he truly could not comprehend the reasoning behind one of the reviews. At least that was my. He was very animated, so I was like, okay, clearly something did not get conveyed properly, or it was just a miscommunication that came the wrong way. I don't know, but at one point we just didn't get an explanation in the state in the gym because we didn't. The guy didn't know how to explain it.
He's been doing this a long time too. So if he was befuddled, then
Yeah.
I'd follow his lead there. Akshay, looked like you had something.
Yeah, final note, and similarly befuddling, and this is not related to the actual game. It's very funny how we've gotten Jake to say VAR for every type of instant replay now, despite hating soccer as much as he does.
I don't
I
hate
guess
soccer.
fine.
I just don't really like it. There's a difference. I can just not generally like something, but that's a different podcast.
Apathy, and
We'll talk.
disdain are are two shades of the same color. Anyway, 12 errors for Bergman, I think, is the last note here. Um, she did not get going in this game much at all. Um, Ohio State did a really good job of controlling her. Not she did get named to the all tournament team, which I guess this was a tournament somehow. I don't get how those work. Um, but it was a kind of a rough day. I think I saw you said 12 errors is on the sheet here, and then I think it was 18 kills, which is a little down from her
21.
usual output. 21?
Yeah,
Okay. Well,
21.
that's
Yeah.
more usual, but the 12 errors are a lot
I think
more.
A
I
lot,
think
yeah.
it's more telling that in terms of 21 kills, 12 errors, that there's not really kind of that second option. Yes, Bianca Bertolino was also in double figures, but that was 11 kills with 5 errors. So again, kind of a pretty high rate there for the two of them. But there's no Brambia to the Bergman, if you will. I think kind of in the same way, or you lose one of the killer bees, if you will, between Bertolino, Bergman, and Brambia. And I think that's noticeable, right? But that's something that's going to come with time. And there were flashes where, Tamara Otene looked pretty solid there. I know Breland Morissette had a couple nice overs from the middle. Like that. That's just something that they're going to have to get used to. And I think that's if I resent this terminology too, but if you're going to take a loss, it might as well be a quality one, and it might be one that you can take something away from. And I think they do have takeaways to take from this. So that's about as productive as I think you can get.
I think that about rounds up the discussion on this set of games. Tech has dropped to number 7 in the polls. Ohio State moved up to 5. BYU dropped from its number 10 position. Louisville, just to round out some ACC foes, Louisville's at 3. They moved up from 4. Pitt is at number 12, which is interesting. Not really sure what to make of that for Pitt. This week on this schedule, Tech goes on the road to Arkansas. They'll play number 24 Arkansas on Thursday, and then they will play Athens in Athens on Saturday. Jack, you have the last
Well,
word on
yeah,
volleyball.
Arkansas being ranked is a nice accidental RPI boost because that was not. I don't think this was necessarily planned. I mean, they're a good team. I mean, obviously we put them on the schedule for a reason. But that this it's just a little bit of an added bonus, really. To hey, if we win this, it's another ranked on ranked win, which will come in handy later in the season.
Yeah, I do want to say that is purely accidental. It's kind of interesting though, just to give a little flavor of history for those who might not know. We somewhat oddly play both Arkansas and UGA seemingly the same weekend every year for the last. I think this will make it 4 outside of COVID, so pretty expected. And honestly, they've rotated NC State there too. So if you went to check Arkansas or UGA's schedule, I think you might find that they're playing State on the reverse side there. But don't quote me on that because obviously no guarantee. But definitely Arkansas and UGA have been pretty regular. And honestly, I'm kind of interested to see if that's the case because I want to know. Oh yeah.
I'm looking at the record sheet right now. This did happen in 2021. It happened in 2019. It happened in 2018, but it was Georgia, then Arkansas. And then in 2017, it did not happen. We did not play Arkansas. Right. We seeded them with Kansas State.
While you did that, I looked up NC State's schedule, and you'll never guess who NC State is playing Thursday and then on Friday. And
I'd like it to be Texas.
It's actually Georgia and Arkansas. So
okay.
That's your boy's hint or hunch coming home to roost there. So I'm a little pleased with that.
It's a bit of a quadrangle of hate, wouldn't you say?
Sure. Let's go for it. I don't know why it happens every year, but it's interesting.
Speaking of interesting things, we will talk about football and their game versus Western Carolina right after this short break.
All right. So we are going to transition over to our usual plug for section103.com. Section103.com is actually the place where I got this fine shirt that I'm wearing right now. They make
podcasting is visual media.
It is totally a visual medium. Thank you. And thank you for agreeing with me. I appreciate that. Anyways, back to Section 103. They make very quality and very soft apparel. It's Georgia Tech stickers, and some more designs. You can check those out yourself. In terms of the Georgia Tech stuff, they do have the Up with the White and Gold t-shirt, which is perfect for any whiteout that may come along. But they also have the ATL logo as well, and that is the only place to get that. In terms of your deals, the standard free shipping on orders over $70 always applies. That is an everyday thing. And you can also buy a gift card for somebody you know and love. If you're not sure exactly which Section 103 design to get them, you can always help them pick out on their own. In terms of the rest, you can find them at Section 103 on Twitter. Great interactive polls and the ability to choose the next design that they make there. And you can also find them at section103.com as always.
Welcome back to Scions of the Southland, part 2. Let's talk about football versus Western Carolina. Georgia Tech won 35-17 to go to 1-1 on the year. Before we talk about the actual game itself, Jake, I want to kick it over to you because this was the opening weekend on campus, at least, well, for alumni, at least, of the new student center. I wanted to get your initial thoughts as an alumnus, what you thought of the place.
It is wild that is the same bones as the old student center because they have colkified the heck out of that. It is wide open.
Hold on. Before we move on, you have to define the term colkified, proper podcast.
Colkification is a term that yours truly has invented to describe the changes Georgia Tech has been making when they renovate spaces, right? This is really commonly seen in the IC in recent renovations, the basement lecture halls of Boggs. Howie just got colkified a couple of years ago. And that is when they, strip out the cladding around, like pillars and stuff. So it's exposed concrete and the floor is open, like smooth concrete floors. You have random wood, just like it's wood. Great, awesome. But it's very postmodernist type look. And one thing it really does is make things a lot airier and a lot more open. And the old student center, great building, great bones. That's why they kept them. But it did not have a lot of windows. And it is wild to stand on the third floor and now have an absolutely stunning panoramic view of the skyline. And it seems like, honestly, there's a lot more space that's accessible, right? That whole third floor used to be a lot of meeting rooms and a ballroom that stuff happened in, but not that much. And now it's 3 straight floors all the way across to the row stamps wing as well. And it seems, granted, I didn't see it at like a lunchtime on a weekday type thing, but seems like there's a lot of options for students for midday as well.
I have been there during a lunch rush because that is now my closest Chick-fil-A, and it feels like what our students that are back when me and Jake were there feels like. Like it's the rush is there.
That wasn't that long ago. You act like it was so long ago.
3 years is not short right now. There's a full pandemic in between.
It was not. Hold on. It was not offline for 3 years.
Yes,
it was offline
it,
for like a 2.
2.5. It was offline for 2.5 years because I remember sitting in Tech Rec in January of 2020 with one of my swim club buddies, or a guy on my exec board. And I was like, hey, we might have to, plan for this for spring break and for our national trip. And he goes, that's not going to be a big deal. That'll go away. So, that was like one of the last times I was there. But Tech Rec still exists.
Tech Rec looks very nice.
Yes. 2.5, 3 years. But it's also Panda getting a longer line than Chick-fil-A nowadays. At least in the times I've been in there. Also, that Chick-fil-A runs very efficiently, so they're able to keep the line short.
That is a change. That is a change because that Chick-fil-A in the old student center was arguably the worst in America at moving efficiently.
And it had a short menu too. That's the thing that always got me. I'm like, there's like 4 things you can have.
Yeah.
But one thing I will comment on that I noticed is the old like student center food court wing that was Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell, Panda, and then Auntie Anne's and Subway down the way had a lot of whatchamacallit, like just seating around, and it didn't seem to kind of have that same density of seating, but it did seem to have, just more space in general. So maybe that's
a lot of the footprint that was taken up by that on the left side of that building. If you're like staring at the restaurant, there's now a theater kind of room, and some elevators and other stuff like that for mobility. They put a bigger staircase back. There's 2 big staircases now. The existing one that was there in the first place, and then a new one on in the newer building. And then the 3rd floor or the second floor food options that used to be like kind of hidden away and you would go into the greenhouse. What was the greenhouse is now fully part of the building. So that footprint still is being used for seating and whatnot. But again, you can see all of campus very easily from out there. Multiple options and they can easily, if someone needs to leave, they can easily put in another vendor whenever they want. So that space, I imagine, will be evolving a lot going forward.
Yeah. One thing I did want to say that broke my brain was seeing the stairs go straight up the whole way instead of having to fork and go right or left in that central thing. But it was nice. And I'm kind of shocked we led with this before the football game. But I guess we did go there before the football game. So that kind of makes sense.
Yes, this was the majority of my game day, personally. Well, I mean, the brightest part of my game day.
Yeah, the atmosphere on campus before the game, I'd say definitely was a little odd just because there wasn't a big chunk of the IC that was still there, and it was also raining. So definitely kind of a lively portion of the day, I'd say, was, that area around Tech Green and then the student center as well. I think maybe more so than your typical game day, just given the weather.
Yeah, it was a nasty weather day that was only made better by the fact that it was 75 degrees and not like 40. If it was a misting at 40, I think I would have had some pretty major issues with how things were going. But, I'll take it at 75. You decided to talk about literal atmosphere as you wrapped up your atmosphere discussion. Let's transition from, out the atmosphere outside to the atmosphere inside. We saw a very rejuvenated student section. a
Yeah.
completely full student section at the start or the early stages of the game. Um, so that's awesome to see, especially after an interesting student section setup versus Clemson. Tell me a little bit more about, I guess, what you saw inside the stadium that was new, anything that people should look out for as the season goes on, now that we've had our home opener.
Yeah, I will say as well, the Upper North looked pretty good. I know they were giving away some tickets up there, and that's something that this podcast has preached for a long time, right? If you're not going to use the inventory, make fans, get people in the building. That makes lifelong fans. Like we're not in a place where if we're not in a place where they're going to get sold, get somebody else in the building and get them hooked on Georgia Tech, just like all of us are. In terms of other stuff from around the stadium, concession lines were pretty good. I went at halftime and it was pretty reasonable. I think most people were accommodated under the awnings if need be, but it seemed like most people kind of toughed it out because it really only ever got misty. One concession thing I did want to talk about in particular, no free ads on this podcast, but I actually had it at the volleyball game on Thursday night, was the Hella Vienna Lager from New Realm. It was pretty solid. And I think that just given that a beer is $10 and that's 12, I'm going to hope that Tech sees a little bit more of that money and say that it was, fine, $2 for the sake of buying a Tech logo beer and, supporting, that initiative there. In terms of overall, I would say I'm a particular fan of Vienna lagers in general, so I might be a little bit biased into liking the type of beer, but they did say they're going to do some more limited releases, and I do think that the name is kind of clever and fun. So overall, pretty solid in terms of our first, or at least my first on-campus experiences since baseball closed in the spring.
Let's move on to the game itself and some of the on-field action. Jake, you were in the arena for this one. Give me the main thing that you saw. I mean, it's an FCS team. You don't really know what you can take away, but give me one thing that you saw that, could be a spark of progress.
Yeah, I mean, I was the guy manning the Twitter. I'll fess up to that. So if you were following along to our Twitter feed, that was me. And one thing that was a theme is that I don't know if it's because it was dark or because it was misty or because uniforms or whatever, or maybe I'm just going blind in my post-college age. But I was not having a very successful time seeing names and numbers on the back of jerseys, to be honest. So a lot of my takeaways are influenced by the announcements that were made over the PA system when stuff would happen. So if anything's slightly off there, you can always let me know. In terms of general thoughts, in terms of the offense, we looked really good on the ground. Dante Smith, great option. He ran for a lot of touchdowns, a superlative amount of touchdowns, and in fact, a number not seen on the ground, that it would be 3 since St. John Days, I believe, in the 2014 Orange Bowl, which is a heck of a comparison, if you will. That would be very, I guess, remiss not to mention that. Like that's a standout performance there. I think McDuffie and Hall, you could probably characterize their nights as pretty good as well. I wouldn't say we had an explosive offensive evening, but yeah, Nate McCullum and Jeff Sims seem to connect well as well. In terms of what I saw in defense, they seem to be in the right places at the right times. I don't know if that's because we're playing an FCS team or, maybe they're just coming around in terms of, creating some chaos back there, to borrow a phrase from the program itself. And then I see you rolling your eyes, Akshay. You got to give them credit where credit is due. They forced a lot.
I don't like buzzwords.
They forced a lot of turnovers. I believe it was it 3 interceptions? I can't remember.
I saw 6 total turnovers.
Okay.
3 fumbles, 3 picks.
Okay, that's what I thought it was in my head, but you're the numbers guy. So in terms of that, they were in the right place at the right time. As expected, Charlie Thomas also had a superlative evening, and that's with just a half. So just in general, seems like some pretty stellar individual performances are big takeaways. Again, it's also an FCS team, so take that with maybe a decent grain of salt. But yeah, no, it was a Dante Smith, Charlie Thomas type of evening, if you will, and it seems like the offense in general otherwise was fine. The defense was fine, and they did what they needed to do to win the game. If any of that sounds off, let me know.
So here's my bit where I tell you everything you said was wrong. No, I'm kidding. But there's one point that I guess I want to bring attention to, or at least discuss, with the advanced box score in front of me. Tech allowed an EPA success rate of 51% to Western Carolina. That's about the 88th percentile of all single game performances between FBS teams in that stat in 2021. That is kind of concerning from if you're looking at defensive performances. I mean, some of the other metrics bear out pretty well here. I mean, yards per play. They allowed a 19th percentile, 4.81 yards per play. They were minus 0.3 in EPA per dropback, minus 0.3 in EPA per rush. Yards per dropback was right around 6.5. So, like, average to really good defensive performances there. I think they struggled in some places, at least for the numbers. They struggled in some places to prevent Western Carolina from getting a foothold and continuing drives. Right. And I think the flip side of that is the offense for Tech sputtered at times, right? We saw Western Carolina get out to a 14-7 lead. Obviously, that's just one score, yada, yada, yada. But the offense sputtered, especially in the passing game. I mean, Sims was, 8 for 17, right? EPA per dropback that I have here in front of me is 0.07, which is right around national average in terms of performances. Really good EPA per rush from Dante Smith and co, right? 0.16, that's 72 percentile. Yards per dropback, again, pretty concerning, right below average at 5.9. So I see a lot of things on the passing side of the ball here, I guess, that are reasons for concern. And I think that's 2 consecutive weeks of, well, I don't really know what you're doing when you're throwing the ball, and that's something that's going to have to iron itself out, right? Especially when you're playing an FCS team, you might try some stuff, perhaps. But it seems like whatever they were trying to do in this game did not go according to plan, at least through the air.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to be positive because, that's something that I find a lot of value in terms of, bringing to the table.
Don't make me the bad cop. I'm just looking at the numbers.
I was going to say you're the numbers guy. I'm the eye test guy. That's how it goes. In terms of, I think, our outlook, our takeaways. I know this is really in our other thoughts bucket, but Jack, I think the question that you brought to the table when we were doing our prep is really something that I think I'd like to park the rest of our focus of the game on, or at least the majority of it. And that is, not to steal your own question, but is there anything that's going to change from this game? Like, did it meet expectations really?
I'll at least try and answer that based on glancing at stats now. Seems like unless we were going to do an absolute smackdown, the answer was no. Like, we would have had to seen something radically new that we just hadn't seen at all in a while that would have pushed that up, made that different. This is our first win in 7 football weeks. So, I mean, we desperately just needed that column to have a different number than 0 for a while, or anywhere between 1 and 3 as we had for the last few years. I mean, I'm seeing that Western Carolina ran a lot more plays as well than I did, than we did, not me. So I assume we were able to at least get off the field quickly when we needed to, or just didn't. Very sad, bad drives. But yeah, I mean, it seems like, I mean, the fan base has been in such a very tenuous spot and very lamenting of just where we are and how stuck this program is between Collins's buyout and just the inability to have the hype from 2017, 18, 19 to transfer into anything actually good to watch on the field.
I think the way that I think about this game is just sort of I mean, it's not like a throwaway, but also there's not. I think Jack's line of questioning is right. Right, there's not a lot to necessarily glean from this performance, other than okay, you were expected to win. You got through. You got through your not trap game, but you got through the game that you were expected to win, and it would have been really bad if you lost. Right. I think I'm on the same page with unless they won by like 65, I don't think the calculus here would have changed. Right. Jake, you get the last word on this game before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, right? There's something mentally incongruous to walk away from an 18-point win or a 3-score win and say, hey, like, gosh, that was disappointing. But I think you're right. Like, Western Carolina dominated the time of possession, and that's not the only way to, score a game or anything like that. But it's a
time of
pretty
possession.
But number of plays run was really high. This team was kept in the game by forcing a lot of turnovers, right? The very thing that I just praised. The defense bailed out on an offense that didn't really always get it done, and I'm not sure that. You guys got to stop DMing me because I'm not wearing headphones because they went kaput. But in terms of, I see that. In terms of just what needed to happen, they got the win, right? Like it wasn't pretty. And I think this ties into my point as a fan. 2 games in 5 days or 6 days, going to them and being at them and night games and all that. It's a lot, right? And I get it. You're supposed to play a football game every week, but there is a reason that the NFL Players Association is pretty insistent on certain week-to-week turnarounds in terms of recovery time and things like that for games. That's a reason why the Thursday night games were a sticking point for a while. And to turn around and expect, 22 to 18-year-olds or whatever that margin is to turn around and play with their hair on fire after, big game, season opener, big opponent. And just taking the normal dings and dunks of a football game on a short turnaround, it's tough, right? So again, there's a little bit to be said, but it's a win. You got to move on to next week, and it certainly will be an interesting game next week.
Yeah, speaking of that game next week, that is a 3:30 kick on ABC versus Ole Miss. Now, it's time for rapid fire with the rest of the ACC schedule. I have it open here on my computer, and it starts on Friday, September 16th, 7:30 on ESPN. FSU travels to Louisville, Kentucky. FSU is favored by 2 points. Mr. Grant, you are up first.
FSU.
Jack.
Seminoles as well.
All right, moving to 11 a.m. on ACC Network, one of those weird kickoffs. Wofford, Virginia Tech. There is no spread on this game. Jack and then Jake, give me your picks.
Yes, Virginia Tech.
VT, but I don't want to.
I would take Wofford in that one, just for the lulz. Moving right along, ESPN2 at noon at the JMA Wireless Dome, formerly known as the Carrier Dome. Syracuse favored by 1 versus visiting Purdue. Jake and then Jack.
Give me cues.
Yeah, Syracuse looks good, actually. So, let's do them.
Interesting thought. Old Dominion conquerors of Blacksburg visit Virginia, who I think may not hold the Commonwealth Cup anymore. This joke was not well thought out. I didn't prepare it. Scott Stadium, UVA favored by 9.5. 2 p.m. ACC Network. Jack and then Jake up first.
I thought about it. I really thought about it, but I'm still going to pull for the Cavs.
ODU covers.
ODU covers 9.5. Interesting. Moving down the Eastern Seaboard, Wake Forest hosts Liberty. Wake Forest is favored by 16.5. Jake, you have the con. That's 5 p.m. on ACC Network, by the way.
Give me Wake all day.
And Jack.
Yes.
Just yes. That wasn't an option, but we're going with it. 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus and ACC Network Extra. Wallace Wade Stadium plays host to Duke and North Carolina A&T. No spread on this one, but Be forewarned, North Carolina A&T, one of the best HBCU teams of recent memory. Jake, you are up first.
Their losses are to North Carolina Central and North Dakota State. So I'm going to say they've been tested, but still give me Duke.
Blue Devils as well.
Moving right down along in the triangle, 7 p.m. ESPN2, Texas Tech visits number 16 NC State at Carter Finley Stadium. NC State favored by 10.5. Both teams are undefeated at 2-0. Mr. Purdy, give me your pick.
I was going to make a joke about how I don't do vibes pick, but this is purely a vibes pick. Texas Tech took their goalpost down within 60 seconds of beating Houston, and I do not think that's a good move for them. So I'm picking NC State for that.
NC State's kind of snake bitten, but I still think they take this one out.
Going back up to Michigan, Pittsburgh visits Western Michigan. Pitt is favored by 10 round points. Over under on that is 53. Jake, you're up first.
This game's on ESPNU, by the way, so good job to the MAC there. But how many times on the broadcast do you think they're going to ask, "Where's Waldo?" Because that seems pretty standard.
I think that's actually what the over under is set for.
give me Pitt. I think they avenge this one.
I picked Pitt as well. Western Michigan would have made the playoff in the upcoming format a few years ago.
Speaking of other Northeastern schools, 7:30 on ESPN3, which I also believe is the RSN, Alumni Stadium in Chestnut, Massachusetts, plays host to Maine versus Boston College. Boston College is scuffling. Maine is an FCS program. Stoppable force, movable object. Tickets as low as $6, apparently. Jake, you're up first.
Boston College is playing a heck of a Northeast schedule this year. I still think I take them to win the game.
Maine lost to Colgate in one of their losses, so I'm going with Boston College.
Colgate's not that bad. Colgate's not that bad for the FCS.
Fear the Patriot League is something I might also say to Clemson, who hosts Louisiana Tech at 8 p.m. on ACC Network at Ye Olde Memorial Stadium. Clemson favored by 34 points, over under 54.5. Excuse me, Jack, you are up first, but I think I know who you're going to go with here.
Good old Tigers.
And Jake.
Give me the orange people.
The former site of College Game Day until it was stolen by App State is Kyle Field at College Station, Texas. Texas A&M, who is somehow still ranked at 24, will host also weirdly ranked and overhyped Miami, who is 13th. Miami 2-0, Texas A&M 1-1. Texas A&M somehow favored by 5.5. Jake, you have the first pick.
Give me the Canes.
And Jack, round us out.
I am here to provide a different opinion, in that I do think the Aggies will pull this one off. App State, I think, is just good and will always be there to wreck you in the first 3 weeks of the year. And no team they need to play Bama. They just have to play Bama. I want to see it happen. I'm pulling for the Aggies here.
Moving on to sicko picks of the week. Jack, Washington? Michigan State? Question mark?
Washington is favored at home over number 11 Michigan State, which just did not compute for me, which is why I'm like, hold on. So yeah, I'm going with the Spartans here. It's a very losable game, but I don't think Washington is of their playoff selves that they were a few years ago when they lost in the Beach Bowl. I think the Spartans can pull this off.
I don't remember who Washington's coach is now, but I do remember they fired the last guy. I really wish I remembered. Jake, Cal, Notre Dame, question mark?
This will be fun. This is a stoppable force and a movable object situation. I have not seen anything out of Notre Dame that makes me go, wow, that is a playoff contender type team. And that's the kind of hype they were getting coming into the year. That said, I haven't really seen anything out of Cal that's made me go, wow, this team is amazing either. I'm still going to take Cal just for the memes and because I know Akshay is a Stanford fan. So there you go.
Stanford looked good versus USC, I will have you know. Also, they ran some option plays that gets mad respect for me. To round out the slate, 0-3 Charlotte visits 0-2 Georgia State on Saturday. That is Georgia State favored by 19.5. Will Healy might get fired out of a cannon in Atlanta, or at least tarmacked at Hartsfield-Jackson. Give me Georgia State. I think that about does it for Rapid Fire. That does it for Sicko Picks of the Week. That about does it for us this week on Scions of the Southland. Gentlemen, do you have anything else that you'd like to cover before we finish up?
I'm good. Bring us home.
That is your job, Mr. Grant. Take us to the promised land.
Darn, I thought I was going to be able to quit early and go get some dinner. That being said, you can find us at FTRS blog on Twitter. You can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com, where articles associated with this and everything else under the Georgia Tech sun get posted. You can email us at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. We do respond to, all those emails, and we really appreciate your suggestions there, as well as in the comments on the site. You can find our podcast wherever fine podcasts are distributed, Apple, Spotify, and all the rest. You can find Akshay's work at gameonpaper.com. It is a great resource to following games, whether they are ACC, Georgia Tech, or just around the rest of football. In the meantime, you can find me at JakeGrant98. You can find Jack at Jack Nicholas, both on Twitter. Thanks again to Section 103. They really do great work. And with that, have a good night. For Akshay and Jack, go Jackets.